Okay, this is attempt number 2. uh, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it's August 26th of 2021. And the reason it's attempt number 2 is because I just pointed out to you in the video that I have deleted that I'm running Linux Ubuntu there in the background on my Dell computer it was in the closet with that on it. And I set it up there, and I don't have much room on my desk now. But so then I downloaded and paid $39 for it. For oh, Zorin, the new Zorin. I paid $39 for it. I haven't installed it yet, but I downloaded it. But I was showing you in the video that I just made their website, but unfortunately my registration code or whatever popped up there, and you could see that. I could have edited it, I probably should have. I, you know, I just deleted it and started over again. So hopefully I can keep from doing something stupid again here. Man, the news is so bad. It's bad from everywhere. And it's bad every day. Afghanistan was never going to go, never going to go well. It was a disaster from the beginning. The Bush administration, they were wrong. I blogged about it in the beginning, before they sent troops there. I blogged them, and when they sent the troops there, I blogged about what they were doing wrong, and I won't go through no use to repeat it, but what they did was wrong, how they did everything. And the reason was because Bush, he sent a small force there to begin with the intentions of doing a massive input. But when they got some troops there, then they realized, oh crap, we're going to have some casualties. And then they had decided that the Bush administration, they wanted to go into Iraq. That's where they wanted to go. And so then they based their thing, okay, well, let's not put these troops that are in Afghanistan, let's not put them in harm's way. Let's get the northern forces, which I guess were probably still, to the Taliban. Let's let them do the fighting, because they've been fighting anyway. Let's give them some guns and some air support and whatever, but let them go in there, because the Bush administration wanted to go into really bad into Iraq, and they realized, hey, if we start having casualties, and then we hit the American people with, well, let's go into, so they that messed up their thing. And then, of course, before they went into, I mentioned that the other day, so I won't go through it again, except to say that when they decided that they wanted to go into Iraq, I said no, and went through a list of things which I knew not even one of them they could do or would do, because the American people wouldn't stand for it. That was my point. Okay, yeah, if you want to go into Iraq, that's fine. Just have Congress declare war. Let's just impose a tax. Americans will have to pay a special tax to pay for the war. We will institute the draft, although the draft really wouldn't have been needed. But all these things were things that I was saying, do all of these things, and then I went beyond that. Like that was wrong. That was a mess. And then, the presidents that followed, when you get sucked into this kind of thing, the presidents, that follow like the Vietnam War. There you just, you go down a road. We should not be. I've talked about that too. Of course, for like Iraq, the Bush administration said that, it wouldn't cost us anything at all financially. Would not cost us anything at all because we were going to take and use the money from the Iraqi oil, and of course it cost not just a lot of blood, but tons and tons of money. Everything, went wrong with that. Everything was wrong about the whole thing, and that's what I've blogged about in the past and talked about. I'm not the only one. The cost of these wars, and they're more than just X amount of money. It's always more money than, just when somebody goes into the military, those fires that they have, where they're burning stuff when they're in the areas, that needs to be, burned and destroyed, and the fumes, and like Vietnam, Agent Orange or whatever. Uh, Untold numbers of military, men suffered and are still suffering. And I think in lots of cases, the government, the Veterans Administration, I'm not sure they're actually ones who make the decision. I think it might be higher up in another, but as to, they undoubtedly suffered. It's like, well, Agent Orange wasn't used in this area, but then people were in that area that they didn't know about. People came through that area, and it's just, we don't, all the people serve, they go in the military and suffer, hearing loss, tremendous amount of, hearing loss because of the, munitions going off and because of other things. And, I'm sure they have now, like on ships and things for the people in the engineering department still. There's just, if we had to honestly allocate money, we should pay the veterans, we should pay the people in the military more than we do. Although it's not as bad, as it used to be. But we need to pay them more because they're going to suffer, untold, they may suffer loss of life and limb and everything else, but they're also going to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and all types of things. And then there's going to be medical problems that they're going to have that are going to, we're not accurately saying, okay, well, these people here, they were in such and such, Grenada or whatever, and, and then they, but the effects and the things that happen, they're more than what we want to, that the military wants to admit. If they had to, if you had to say, okay, well, these people are going to need medical care forever, and they're going to have, it would, then you'd have to, it would, if you had an honest, government, it'd be like, well, we can't afford. Now, of course, now if we're attacked, and whatever, we have to respond, and all that type. But so far as just going into some place to, like. Oh, not Bush. Oh, the movie guy, or I don't want, if you call him a movie guy or whatever. Going into, what was it? Ronald Reagan. And the Republicans, actually Republicans now don't like all of their heroes, saints or whatever, ones that they adored, like Ronald Reagan. They would hate him now, you know. But he was president, and in Lebanon, we had a barracks blown up, uh, and I forget how many, a lot, several hundred, I think, and killed, and others, of course, injured. And Reagan pulled them, pulled the military out of there immediately. Just, okay, get the hell out of there. But what does he do? He attacks immediately. Oh, what was it? Some damned little island down. Nobody. I had heard of it because I used to listen to shortwave radio, and I would pick up. There was like, I think, one radio station there, and one time I was listening to the broadcast, and it was a British BBC broadcasting cricket. What was it? Was it Kingston? Anyway, I was listening to it, to the shortwave radio, which I did. That was when I was starting about 1955, before I went into, or 54, before I went into high school. All through my high school years, and for years after that, I tracked Earth satellites. I tuned in all kinds of stuff. I got pretty good. Where I could, after all that, I could, if I heard music, I could tell you, like, oh, okay, I could say, it didn't matter. I couldn't make any money with it or anything, but I could. I even did a radio program that was broadcast over shortwave radio for about a year, 3 times a week, to Europe, Africa, and Latin America. But anyway, I could, and I still can a little bit. I can hear music from, say, Costa Rica or something like that, and if I just hear the music, I'll say, Costa, I can deal, and then a little bit with languages also. I can't, speak any languages or, translate them, but I, like recently, my ex-wife or whatever, she's watching television 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'll go in the, I'll go in the kitchen. She's in the dining room / kitchen area. I'll go into the kitchen, and she doesn't really like foreign movies or movies that, but she does watch. Well, she watches everything, and sometimes she does like. But I'll go in, and she'll say, "Oh, I think this is a." She doesn't know the difference between England and the UK or anything else, or Ireland, or But I'll go in there, and she'll say, "I think this is an English thing," or I'll go in and she'll say, "But I think this is in English, from England, but it's in a foreign language," and a lot of times I can say, "Well, looks like it's Polish or Russian or something like that," but because of but, so I picked up some skills, but none of them put any money in my pocket. By the way, in case I never have served in the military. I wanted to. I went to a military high school just so I could be in the military. And I've told this before, but I'll tell it again briefly, quickly. I was 40 pounds. As soon as I graduated from high school, I went down to sign up, and I was 40 pounds under the minimum weight requirement. I didn't know they had a minimum weight requirement. The thing was, I thought, make a man out of you. And then a few years later, I got a notice from the selective service people that I had to report for a physical. I went down, there was 200 of us, and went through the testing that they did there. It was like half a day, except for me. I spent the second half. The other 199 left, and I had to stay until I could urinate, and I couldn't urinate. And I kept telling them, let me go across the street to the Union Station. I'll get myself a Coke, and I'll come back, and I can give you your sample. No, no, no. Finally, they wanted to go home, and I said, go across the street. I went and got a Coke, came back pissed for them. But anyway, I got a notice from the Selective Service people that I was 1A, and so I went down to the, Army recruiter or whatever, and said, well, I'm here. And he said, okay. He said, well, yeah, everybody who's 1A, you're on my list. I'd have been contacting you. And I said, well, I'm here. I said, well, I'm kind of pissed because I want to make a career in the military, and I was here 2 years ago, and I was turned down, but I'm here now. And he said, why were you turned down? I said, oh, he said, okay, just a second. So he called the medical people, and I guess they finally looked at the height and weight. Yeah, we'll send him a new card, 1Y, which I had the same thing as Donald Trump. I found out years later he was 1Y. And then I found out, which I did not know, 1Y was like, actually, they changed, I didn't know that either, that down the road a piece when they needed, I think for Vietnam or something, they changed the thing. In fact, on this quota thing where people ask questions and people answer it. Anyway, I got it. Okay, I found out. Anyway, people ask, and then I found out for the first time in this the last few years that there was a time when the military would take you if you were underweight or overweight, and if you were overweight, instead of you getting 25 minutes to eat your lunch, you'd get like 10 or 15 minutes to eat your lunch, and instead you wouldn't get any dessert. If you were if you were underweight, instead of getting 25 minutes to eat, they'd give you 35 minutes to eat, and you had to, of course, everybody had to eat everything off their plate, and you could probably get an extra dessert away, and so. But what I found out was that the 1Y card that I had, I read, recently before Trump was elected, that he was 1Y also. He also went to a military high school, except he went to one for rich people. And but anyway, he was 1Y. Well, first he got just exemptions for going to school and all that kind of stuff. But and I was reading the news when there were stories about him, and before the election, it's mentioned that he had a 1Y classification, and then they mentioned in there that the 1Y classifications were all changed to 4F on such and such a date. So I was 4F when it actually turned out. Oh man, the news. Biden, of course, is going to be a really bad mark for him. Is he responsible? No, number one, Bush is, responsible. And then each one of the other presidents are, and especially, of course, Trump, because he decided during his term that we were pulling out, and he set a date and everything for pulling out, and then he told them to start, the military. He was a commander-in-chief, and he said, this is it, and without any, he just decided it. No meetings, no calling in of the generals and the admirals, and what about this, and how should we do this, and how many, and what. He just says, pull everybody out, and on such and such a date, or whatever, and sort of tied Biden's hands. And we needed to come out. I mean, it's just ridiculous that we went in. The whole thing was ridiculous. But Biden is going to be really hammered on this, and it's really events that he really couldn't have done anything about. We need smart presidents always. I mean, you can't afford to have one guy who's stupid. You can't afford to have a stupid president. And it's not just, stupid if you have somebody who, doesn't care about the entire picture. And I don't know what we do about, what we do. I never thought we would ever elect somebody, like Trump. And I've mentioned, I did several videos like, we need to learn from we need to learn from, when things happen, we need to learn and then make the necessary changes that we need to make so that something like this doesn't happen again, or for the first time or something. I mean, there's certain things you can and you just can't do. I don't know. I think I was a long time ago. It was like, don't mess with the Constitution. And now I have come around to the point. Yeah, we need to change it. Because the Constitution says, to be president of the United States, you need to be 35 years of age and born in the United States. That's it. I think we need to change that. I'm not suggesting, that smart people need to look at all these things. You can't do something like, okay, the person has to have a mental exam. Like if police officers or whatever, you have to go through and have, talk to a counselor or whatever. I'm sure it's not, not good enough, but as we can see. But, and you couldn't do this if, like for the president, you can't say, well, the president, who would you have him see? Are you going to have him see? Okay, one psychiatrist will have to talk to the candidate, and he can be a Democrat, and then one Republican psychiatrist can talk, and then have somebody else. That's not going to work. What would work out would be then the Democrat, who's the psychiatrist, would say for the Republican, no good. I mean, that would not work. That shouldn't be that way. People should be, but, yeah. I mean, one thing, but then that comes down to the state. That's another problem. You got 50 states, and now we see that the Republicans have decided that, okay, the states count the votes. So they're going to make sure, they're trying to make sure. I think what will happen is that there's going to be a, federal law passed that is going to, and the states, of course, take it to court, and that type of stuff. But it's because you can see now that, what the Republicans are attempting to do, which they're not very smart, but that it's, the states count the votes, and the states decide who can, really who can vote in a way. So there's going to be a federal law that, prevents the states from messing with the system. We want everybody to be able to vote, and we don't want states trying to keep people from not being able to vote. All these things need to be worked out. And when we have something like this that happened with, President Trump, former President Trump, we need to learn from that. Okay. One thing, he didn't have to, he still hasn't come forth and told us, about his finances, who he was, was the Russian government giving him money? It appears that they were. His sons have said that, before before he was elected, and I think after he was elected, they talked to people and said, "Oh yeah, we get all our financing from Russia." Uh, so, if the state of California were to pass a thing saying that in order to be on the ballot to run for president and vice president, you have to uh, give your tax information and other financial, information. Uh, it would be taken to the courts, and it would go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would, I think, would say, I don't know if they would say it along partisan lines or not. They'd say, no, the Constitution says, 35 years of age and born in the United States. That's it. That's what the Constitution says. It's difficult to get get the Constitution changed or a new constitutional amendment or whatever, but, what the Republican Party, of course the Democrats do, but, we can see where the problem is. What the Republican Party needs to do is, because the person's going to run as a Democrat or a Republican, although it's not against the law, by the way, because we used to have people in the United States running for President of the United States and other offices that were communists. They ran on the Communist Party, ticket or whatever. They weren't very successful. But what you need is for like the Republican Party to say, we're not going to pick a candidate who doesn't, disclose all his financial information, and that are, before the convention it'd be Republican since it's a Republican Party, and our people will, check and verify and use, not use such and such people to check and report back to us and that type of stuff. Of course, the Democrats would have to do this. It would have to be, but if one state just says, that wouldn't work. And that's the problem. You got 50 different states, and you'd have states saying, no, the Constitution just says 35 years of age and born in the United States. You can't make, So we need to work all these, but this is the opportunity we have seen, and you can't put in, you wouldn't want to, my God, you don't want to be able to put in, you don't want to put into the thing, the state law or whatever, you don't want to put in there, a man can't grab a pussy and be, you can't put all these type of scenarios in there. Part of the problem is this thing where the United States Supreme Court ruled that freedom of speech allows, or that corporations are people. Corporations are people, and people have the right to donate money or give money for political causes, and so there you have, they did have some rules in effect, how much people could donate, all that kind of stuff, but when the Supreme Court ruled, corporations are, they're people and entitled to freedom of speech, and they can give money. And that's how the Republicans ended up with all of these candidates, because one rich person, like the governor of, Texas, if somebody wants, which they did, if somebody wants to finance him, he ends up appearing on the on the stand up there along with, legitimate politicians and other people, and then you have like the governor of Texas up there, and then you have the black brain surgeon who recently died. He ends up, because he can get a backer. Maybe he could back himself, but he could get a backer. So you have these people. So you have, let's say, 15, whatever it was when it started out, and Trump is one of them. And all these people, you have the people watching that, he's just a, he's just a politician, and you get these people thinking, maybe we should put somebody in there that would really shake things up, and this kind of. If you had where these people actually had to get funding from people with small amounts from corporations and businesses, then you wouldn't have had the governor of Texas. Remember, he couldn't remember, I want to abolish 3 departments of the government, and they are 1, 2, and he turns to the to the other people, do you remember who the third one I wanted, and stuff like that. And then you have, and I guess we're wrong, you talk about somebody, you talk about a situation. Well, it's not brain surgery, meaning that something's really, because a person is, and supposedly, name almost came to me. I guess you can be a brain surgeon because he didn't have any political. That's another thing too, a mistake that we make. And I think we all, we hate politicians, we hate lawyers, and most of these politicians are, I think, lawyers. It's a double, we hate Congress. But, and like we'd like to be, we actually do need politicians, people who have studied and have degrees and have experience, started maybe as a city councilman and then became the mayor and then became a lieutenant governor of a state and then became a governor of the state, or maybe become a house, member or a member of the Senate. You actually, we think, oh, we don't want these people, because it is kind of bad when you have somebody like any of it. When you have somebody who spent his entire life, he never had a job, except, on the tit of the American people, he's had health, and, if he was in the House and the Senate, and if he was a governor or whatever, whatever he was, these people, they're there all the time. Sometimes they die, be a guy and he dies, and his wife will run for his office, and she'll be elected, Or, and so you kind of think, but on the other hand, you do need people who, like former President Trump, he knew absolutely nothing about politics, and he didn't even attempt to, to learn anything, and he wouldn't listen to anybody. And I mean, this was the worst scenario that we could have. It was so bad you can't believe that actually, that it happened. And then I can remember, well, we can all remember, which I objected to him, and I had in the past I commented, when somebody's, a politician says this or that, you should just be able to say, you're lying, and it was like, no, you couldn't do that. Fox News wouldn't even do that. CNN wouldn't do that. They would never say, oh, liar. If the other person is saying, we never went to the moon, that was fake, and whatever, the other person couldn't say, you're a liar, Well, I think we disagree on that. I think it's like, and then you have Trump that just comes up with this stuff that is 100%. They're actually now, news media are saying, oh, that's, here's the lies that so and so has said. I'm not sure we've gone too far that way, but things have changed. 7 U.S. Capitol police officers sue Trump and stop the steel organizers over the riot. That's something too that I've talked about. What we need, like these nuts who said, the school shootings didn't take place. It's a false flag thing. The kids that were slaughtered, the kindergartners and first graders, they really weren't. Those were actors. And then the people who believe this kind of crap, they go out and confront parents who lost, whose children were, slaughtered. And they tell them, no, you're a liar. And some of those people actually had to move. I think one family had to move 6 or 7 times because of threats and everything else. And there's other situations like that. What you need to do is sue, and I think they actually did. I think the family members have sued. But what it needs to be is, like I remember years ago, a long time ago, down in the South, the Klan. By the way, my grandfather was in the Klan, my mother's father, but a lot of Americans were back then. But anyway, in the South, the Klan, the Grand Wizard or whatever, and they had this nice place where they could practice their, military operations and all that kind of stuff. A black group, I forget which one, sued them, in civil court. And of course you have to appear, both sides have to appear, like President Clinton had to appear before, be interviewed, and he got asked, did you ever sleep with that woman? And he said, no, I never slept with that woman. That got him impeached, not removed from office, but it actually got him impeached. And but what needs to happen is these people need to sue these people that are telling these, and Fox News. I think you could sue Fox News. I like with the things going on with I'm in Texas, by the way. Things going on down here in Texas. I think that you couldn't just make the numbers up, but I think you could say X, at this point, X number of thousands of people in Texas have died from the virus because of the governor, because of the rules he's put forth, that, and the same with the governor of Florida or whatever. So I think, one, you should be able to bring almost, manslaughter charges against them. But at least you should be able to sue them for, financial and own. Because if you could do that, well, once, also in the procedures that you go through when you're suing somebody in civil court, like Clinton, you have to appear, people have to appear. You have to produce documents. They're going to say, we demand to see these documents. Of course, the other side can say, we want to see, but they should, then you could see, when you're suing the governor of, say Texas, and when it goes to civil, before you even get to court, when you're doing the disclosures and that type of stuff, he could be asked, on such and such, who did you talk to? Who are the people that you talked to on such and such a date? Okay, when you were talking to them, what were you talking about? Did you say that it would be, good politically for you to say that people shouldn't wear masks because that would ingratiate you with the former president? Did you say that? Did other people say, yes, that's a good idea? Did somebody in the room say, but this is dangerous because people, all this stuff would come out, and then it can be used in court, and then instead of somebody getting into trouble for saying, no, I didn't sleep with that woman, it'd be, conspiracy and, everything else, and then be sued. If you could, like the Pelo guy, my God, I think he's got to be even more mentally ill than former President Trump, because his liability, for the things that he's said and done is unbelievable. So he's going to be sitting out in front of the pillow factory or whatever, homeless, with a cup trying to, whoever sues him, should be able to end up with everything that he has. And if that were to happen, if those type of things were to happen, if somebody lies and causes, such problems and all this stuff, and they meet, together and all this type of stuff, if that were punished in civil court, we're talking about civil court, if that was to cost the person his, everything he had, then you'd have these people saying, wait a minute, you'd have people in Fox News back rooms, oh, wait a minute, don't say that. Actually, of course, that's happened. We've seen on Fox News that they cut off the Pella guy and cut off Donald Trump and everybody. Don't say, about the voting machines, and don't say about that kind of stuff. It's not a cover-up. It's, so, yeah, what we need to do is look at these situations and what happens in the future. Look at the situations and what can we learn from that. And then we don't have to go through it again, or else we're going to go. And same thing with when the Clinton thing came up, and after the, when he was impeached, not removed from office, but, impeached. On my blog or whatever, I listed all the Republicans who voted, and I said, all of these people who voted to, who voted to remove him from office, none of these people should ever be elected to hold any office in the United States. It would be up to the people, back in their home states and cities and that kind of stuff. And I said, but what they need to do, what needs to happen and isn't going to happen is they need to be punished in such a way they can't hold, it's not, you can't pass a law and say, okay, we don't like you, so you can't be elected. No, it would have to be that the voters would say, and I said, what's going to happen then is, if these people aren't, held to account, then from now on, every president that we have is going to be under the threat of impeachment. Whereas if they had punished these people because it was crazy to impeach a president because it was, of course, it was perjury. But the guy had a wife, and it was still, would you remove a president because of, no. To remove a president should be a serious matter. That's the way it was intended. That's why it was set up, the way it was. But now it's become a circus, and we need to fix that. Of course, I didn't have that many people. They're not going to listen to me anyway. But if the Republicans had been, all those people voted out of office and not able to hold, if nobody would vote for them ever, then in the future we'd have people would be in Congress and there wouldn't be anybody mentioning, sort of like Eisenhower used to play, and I complained about. I was a kid, basically. I complained about President Eisenhower playing golf all the time. That was one of my, he doesn't do anything, and he had 8 years where he didn't do very much. He did build the highway system we have, and other things, but uh, if you had accountability for for people, then they wouldn't do those kind of things. You wouldn't have anybody saying like they did for Clinton. They had a small group. We know that got together. A very small group. We want to get this SLP. Man, they hated. I've mentioned that too in my videos. When there was talk of Bill Clinton, he was governor of Arkansas. I didn't know who he was. There was talk of Bill Clinton being maybe the Democratic candidate, and then the Republicans went fucking crazy on, and they were going, and I was like, who's Bill Clinton? And it turned out that there's a governor's thing, somebody is elected, governor of or the head of the governor's group, all this, 50 states. And then what they do is, and Clinton, he was a Democrat, but he was elected by and then they, of course, they have a separate, breakup of, then they have somebody's elected, the head of the other party, and both parties, but anyway, so it was like, man, these people are going crazy about this Clinton, and his wife. And I had to do a search. Oh, he's governor. I even forgot. We had in Arkansas. I was like, Arkansas? Oh, yeah, that's a state. And then they hated him pathologically, psychotically. They just hated him. I wasn't crazy about, of course, he was a Democrat, so I was for him. But I wasn't crazy about him. But the Republicans were, it was something, they had investigations done before he was elected, and all the way through there was investigation that never found anything. I guess it pays to be a Rhodes Scholar, be smart, and not, do the things that, that Trump does. Trump goes before the cameras, and just about every day that he was president, he would admit to doing something illegal. And his followers didn't care. And he would lie about everything, and his followers didn't care. I don't know how you correct a situation like that. I knew the election was going to be close. My ex-wife, she has never voted in her life. She really doesn't know anything about politics at all, but she has opinions sometimes on things. But she is, and if you would bring something up like this, she'd say, well, Jim thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and Trump, like you don't know so much. You were, No, I knew that it was going to be close. And I knew when I went to vote, I took an Uber to vote, and the driver that took me over to vote was a veteran, and he was a big-time supporter of Donald Trump. And then when I got picked up after voting, a different Uber driver, he was a veteran, and he was a big-time. And I thought, this doesn't sound good, but I still thought, I knew it was going to be close by what everybody was saying. But, and I really sort of thought, no, American people are not, but I knew it was going to be close. But I thought what was going to happen was that the born-again Christian people who are, conservative and, against abortion and against, all this kind of stuff, I thought, okay, they would find it hard to vote for a Democrat, but they can't bring themselves to vote, for a guy who, wants to grab women's pussies and own the Miss America thing and go into the, told people, I told them on the radio, that yeah, I get to walk into when the girls are dressing, That's one of the benefits of me being the owner of, that type of. I thought those people they're gonna stay. A whole bunch of them are gonna stay home. They didn't stay home. Quite the contrary. They came, which just I was not expecting that. And by the way, if you go back over videos that I have made, and you go back further, if you can find any of those things that I've written or whatever, you'll say that, hey, these born again Christian people, they're good. They'd be good to have as a neighbor. They're wrong about this and this and that, but they're good, decent, decent people. They're mistaken about how old the earth is. They're mistaken about a whole bunch of other things, but they're good people. Because of because of them voting for Trump the way they did, and because of the position, because of their leaders, their church leaders, spouting, Trump's stuff and whatever, I've changed my mind. They're not good people. I'm sorry if you're one of them. I'm sorry. You're not a good, you're not a Christian. You're not a good person. That's it. That's sad because I worked with a lot of those people, and I thought then they were good people. Mistaken. Remember one time I was working with a nurse. She was married. They married her. They were both in Bible college. They both got, they got married. They had like 7 kids. Homeschooled. Didn't have a television set. Objected to Halloween because it was a satanic, thing. What is it? 3,000 or 5,000 years that they think the earth is, And so anyway, I was talking to her, she worked in the emergency room and I worked security there. I worked with her just about every night that I worked, I think. Well, I don't think she worked. I think she worked maybe 2 days a week. Well, sometimes she even took off because she was homeschooling and doing all this kind of stuff. And I thought then, good people, all of them. So anyway, let's say, is it 5,000 years? I think that they think the earth is. So, she was saying, and I said, I started to say her name, but I'll say Mary. Mary, you don't really believe that I know what it was. Her husband worked for Hallmark Cards, and she took all her kids, because she did. I talked to her about, this homeschooling, and I said, and then she said, no, I take my kids out, and I said, aren't you just trying to avoid, them having to mix with other kids that are going to say, no. And then she said, oh, we went to, they had a display of dinosaurs or something. And I said, you took your kids to, and I said, what about, she said, no, the earth is 5,000 years old. And I said, so, you're sure? Well, I'm sure. So the next morning is when they had the first story that I'd seen about the Iceman. The guy who, at that time, I think they thought it was in the Swiss Alps. And then years later, they found the place, I think it was actually in Germany because of the borders, He was actually in Germany. But anyway, the next day the paper had a thing about him and pictures, And it showed that he had tattoos. And what else was it? He had tattoos and Anyway, so it was in the paper, and hey, Penny, we were talking last night, and you said the Earth is 5,000 years old. They found Adam in the Swiss Alps, frozen, and he had Adam, so I was doing that, joking with her and everything like that. And so I've changed my mind about how can you be religious, I mean, I was, baptized. I was a Catholic, I was, my parents, I was baptized, I was First Holy Communion, I was confirmed, I was an altar boy, I attended only Catholic, grade school and Catholic high school, and the whole bit. A few years ago, I decided no, and it wasn't the priest, doing things with little boys or whatever. That wasn't the thing that did it. It was the bishop's council or whatever, all the bishops, who live like princes. In fact, they're like called, the princes of the church. And, and I can understand, you're the bishop of a large diocese, major city or part of even maybe more than one city, and you have to entertain people, try to get them to make donations, you have to, have dinner parties, you have to live in a nice house. I can understand all that kind of stuff. But these old men who are, bishops, and they're on the bishop council, get together and say, we don't like, well, they did it with Biden, he, is not opposed to abortion or whatever, and so therefore he's not going to be able to, of course it's up to the parish priest, but he's not going to be able to receive communion. And they also issue like statements and things that, whatever, and I thought, you're just a bunch of old white men who are, basically Republican and using, the Pope and the Vatican and all this type of stuff to, get your ways. So I just decided to bye-bye. Don't have time for you guys either. You can go be with Southern Baptist. I wonder how many people I pissed off this time. Remember, there's a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Thank you very much for watching. Maybe I won't see you again. I don't know. Thank you for watching.